are overwhelmingly surrounded by things. Even as I sit here in my desk, I'm in the company of a few hundred unnatural human-made objects. My desk is a bazaar, only one of countless little spaces and corners filled with knickknacks and implements and gadgets that make up a worldwide emporium. In my work and art practice, I have always been fascinated with the fabricated world and its economy. As a young artist fresh from university, I explored the nuances of hierarchy among things in art history and the wider art world. I regretted the reality of material marginalization despite the strong feminist movement of the late 20th century and felt that women's work, whether in general or specifically within art, was still largely considered as trite affairs. I submitted a diptych with an upholstered panel accompanied by a hand-sewn sculpture of a floppy duck hanging within a gilded frame to a prestigious art competition in 2003. And the work, entitled Martyr a la carte, was promptly returned to me as the judges deemed it ineligible to be categorized as a painting. This work then became the anchor of my second solo exhibition, Swine, held at Green Papaya Art Projects in 2004. Over the years, my work has explored the different power structures within materials and things, reflecting upon their lives and history within art, its history and movements, and has expanded to investigate the wider social context in which this emporium has journeyed. This journey is endlessly fascinating. Woven directly into our culture and history, our current reality may be seen through this lens. One of my main interests is how this empire of things contributes to this vision, this visual culture, influencing our perception and tapping into our consciousness. In a way, I see things as having its own lexicon, building its own vocabulary, but in our minds a caveat. Memory is a slippery substance, elusive, not solid, not air. Psychogenic Fugue, 2008. The Ghost of an Upright Piano Materialized in Crochet Lace is a work where I present a single material, lace. It is the crocheted kind, made by hand, and recalls the millions of our mothers and grandmothers, great and great-great, bringing to mind personal and universally shared memories, but also simply the old or old-fashioned. If there is any other material, then it is the immaterial piano, both visible and invisible. Together, the associations and references weave a narrative of changing tastes and patronage, social aspirations, and the failure of such aspirations, which, concealed, is transformative. The piano becomes a silent piece of furniture, forgotten and unseen. In a way, I think my play with materials and things is a way of articulating the questions that arise as I handle each material and investigate their contexts. My intention is to make objects that serve as propositions, juxtaposing divergent elements together, predicating humble, ordinary materials with bits of the elusive or the precious like a dash or an accent, sometimes an underline, in its articulation. When I started weaving Manila hemp from a large coil of rope, I only knew that I wanted the cordage magnified in size into an architecture of sorts. Everything else that has been added to it is added from its own material, as well as our own memory. The regular rhythm of light reflected on every link and its surprising fluidity comes from the material itself. In some of the pieces, I have encased some of the links in clay to suggest a break in the chain, but also to highlight the materiality, as if by concealing, I have actually magnified the tactile quality of the hemp. It is a complex game of material politics, and this game plays out in my work because the real game in the real world is a much more complicated network of queries. What gets preference? What gets bought? What gets produced? Where does it come from? Where is it going? Today? Tomorrow? In this vast emporium, there are so many questions to posit, and so many questions we seek answers to. Every little thing, every object contains its own cachet of histories and stories, and we live within their expansive universe. The most fair universe is like a heap of rubble tossed down in confusion. Heraclitus from Fragment 124. I had this quote etched into a mirror as part of a site-specific work exhibited at the Museum of Contemporary Art and Design in Manila in 2015. The work is accompanied by a floor piece made up of images of different discarded materials printed on tiles for domestic use. History is a Jungle is a similar floor piece, thus titled because it really feels like that, a jungle we have to navigate. That there are so many things thrown in adds to the confusion, but ultimately form part of the evolving narrative. I explore this idea further in my series of tapestries, where making sense of the chaos is neatly hemmed within a pictorial field. I wanted these tapestries to reflect the explosion of data, of history and information, of false history and misinformation. Taking culturally important pieces from Philippine art history, I reworked certain pieces, replacing the original painting with my own digital work. The study is then fed to a human-assisted digital loom that weaves the resulting tapestry. The translation of the painting into a weave lends the work a more inclusive, palpable retelling of the painting's narrative, bringing to fore issues that were not originally discussed or explored. The contemporary lens is constantly adjusting its focus, and we are only now recalibrating how we view the gender and racial biases, for example, of how history was written. In more recent years, I have circled back and refocused on working with fibers and textiles, as these tapestries demonstrate. I have found working with them emancipating. In a sense, I feel that whatever form these threads and fabrics take not only call to mind their context and stories, but also pull the community of people who produce them into my space of work. When I started conceiving the tapestries more than a decade ago, my idea was to break free of the masculine heroism attached to painting. As with material politics, painting, in some sense, retains the power of a single creator, a god manipulating paint, and the painting, the masterpiece creation. My new works include paintings that employ the wider vocabulary my practice has gained throughout the years, freeing up the pictorial space to allow a host of media that allow a dynamic play of textures and ideas. My attempt here is to throw my arms wide open. I wanted to create a riot, embracing the varying sums of the journey, of the Emporium, as it has hurtled through time and space, along with the suggestion of everything it has gained and shed. In my artist's notes for Hoarding Fossils and Blankets 2020, where I first exhibited my series of tapestries in Silverlens, Manila, I wrote, "In my head, Hoarding Fossils and Blankets welcomes time into its fold. It is geography, or is it geology, quarried into threads. The shuttling back of threads that bring us from warped histories to perceived futures. The mining, the translation is craft, and this object making becomes an act of dissembling and assembling, by one hand and by many. The many here is crucial. I realized, especially during these extraordinary times, that the adage, 'it takes a village,' holds especially true. If object making were merely an extension of the principal maker's whims or convictions, perhaps objects would be two-dimensional. But what a pleasure it is to grasp a moment in time, as if it were dimensional, and turn it in your hand and pass it along for someone else to consider. Emporium brings together different objects that explore this roundness of materials, how our perception shifts as we examine materials from multiple angles. The personal, the political, the social, and the historical are all woven into the work's narratives.